Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Tim Lee. I'm a research analyst at Red Cloud Securities. I'm delighted to host a Red Cloud webinar on vanadium exploration and development today. We will hear from Michael Griffiths, President and CEO of Currie Rose Resources. During today's webinar, he will provide an overview and outlook. Then we will take questions. You may type your questions into the chat box at any time, and we will get to as many as we can. Before we kick things off, first we need to discuss some fine print. During this Currie Rose webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the company's forward-looking statements disclosure outlined on page 2 of the Currie Rose corporate presentation that can be found on the company's website, currierose.com. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures on Currie Rose. So we have Currie Rose presenting today. The company has recently transformed as it consolidated a large property package in Queensland, Australia, that covers a significant part of a vanadium-bearing rock layer. This hosts an existing resource, but that appears to represent only the beginning, and the company is now poised to drill across its property and delineate further mineralization. With that, I now turn it over to Mike to update our audience on the company.
Yeah, hi everybody, and welcome to Currie Rose. It's a pleasure to be speaking with you all today. I'd like to run through the Currie Rose presentation for you. It's an exciting one because not only are we in the battery metal space, but we're also in an area that's a district scale in North Queensland, with a very with a local government and a state government that's very keen to see vanadium development, and they're looking to add quite a lot of government funding to make that happen as well. So, without dwelling too long on the first page, I'll skip to the next page, which is the disclaimer, the forward-looking statement, which we've already been spoken about, and now into the meat of the sandwich. So why Currie Rose? We are a vanadium company now. We have the backing of 2 ASX-listed companies that both held parts of the area that we have acquired, and both of those are in the metals, battery metal space as well, and I'll explain a little bit more about them further in the presentation. Vanadium. Why vanadium? Well, vanadium is a critical mineral. It's listed on all the main economies of the world as a metal that metals that need to be brought into production from different locations. So on the critical minerals list, US, Canada and Australia all have vanadium high on that list. It's very important for the carbon economy as it takes away from the hydrocarbon usage. The area we have is mining-friendly jurisdiction in North Queensland, and it's a situation where we're in sedimentary vanadium oxide area right in the middle of Queensland. It doesn't get much further in the middle of Queensland, and you'll see that in a map going forward. We also have inherited a JORC-compliant historic resource, which has recently been confirmed for 43-101. The Cambridge resource sits at 84 million tonnes of 0.3% vanadium pentoxide, which you'll see, if you're not a vanadium follower, you'll see that that's a very competitive value of vanadium pentoxide. The 43-101 report is lodged, and you can connect to that on our website or via CDAR. We have also can report that the preliminary metallurgical studies that have been done by the previous owners produced very good results and we also have significant potential for expansion of the resources at not a great cost. So there's a tremendous blue sky upside potential. From the management team, myself, I've been in the mining industry as a geologist now for 40 years, so long time, numerous different commodities. So I bring along many years of experience and also contacts within not only this region, but also in other parts of the world where we're obviously, these days it's hard to get people to come to work in all jurisdictions. So having that connection is a big one. The two owners previously of these projects, Chalice Mining and Liontown Resources, will be large shareholders of the company on conclusion of the transaction. And if you're not aware of those two companies, I'd suggest you look them up on the internet, because both of them are sort of $2 billion companies that have risen to that height over the last 2 or 3 years. So we bring experience, and we also have a great project to show you today. So let's just look at the situation of where everything is and how everything plans together. So from a location, we're sitting right here in the middle of Queensland. That's where our area is. That's the epicenter of what we're trying to do. Roughly 400 kilometres from the coast and 400 kilometres to Mount Isa in the west. And both of those areas are serviced by a railway line which runs right through to the coast, and a major highway which also service that. So from an access point of view, it is everything is in place. So there's nothing needs to be built. So road, rail, and power and port access are key strategic elements to the project. Queensland is also a mining state. It has a very skilled workforce in the mining industry, and a lot of what we require for this project will be sourced locally within the state. As a commodity, again, I point out that it's on the critical minerals list, and I also point out that there are other accessory minerals with this project that include molybdenum and zinc, and there may be some other credits available with high purity alumina and high purity silica, which may become other byproducts as we go forward, and that's part of our test program into the future. The area of the project area is quite large. We have 7 licenses that cover 1,246 square kilometres, and it's on private land, which means that currently there are no native title claims, and so we're very fortunate that will be the case. But notwithstanding that, there is a very well-oiled, prescriptive way of dealing with the First Nations traditional owners in this state, which has worked very well, and we're very privileged to be part of that as well. From a resources point of view, as I indicated, we've got 84 million tonnes of 0.3% vanadium pentoxide and 1.88 ppm moly oxide. Whilst those numbers for people who don't know this space, whilst those numbers may seem quite low, the opportunity comes with the product itself, where it is in terms of its position in the ground, which I'll explain further in the presentation. So we have, apart from the resource at Cambridge, we also have a number of advanced drill targets. 3, in fact, that have been drilled before. One is Flinders Range River, one at Runnymede, and the third one I'll show you on the map coming forward. Sorry, a bit distracted there. There was a knock on my door. So next thing, let's just pop to the next slide here. So from a regional point of view, again, we can demonstrate that there are other resources in the area, and this clearly indicates Currie's Cambridge resource in relation to our nearest neighbours. So the Cambridge resource and extension basically sits right here on the map, and that's where we will focus a fair bit of our attention this year to increase that resource, and I'll explain further about that on the next slide. But the Flinders River area is up here, and we also have the Runnymede, which sits in this here, and this is quite an interesting patch. And we also have the Silver Hills, which sits down here. So Silver Hills, Cambridge, Runnymede, and Flinders River all have recent or historic drilling. But we also have another big area in here which has virtually had no work at all. And all of this green that you can see is the near surface outcropping of the Tullabeck Formation, which is the geological bed that is host for the vanadium. So we've still got quite a lot of upside potential in our project area, which has basically been untouched. So Silver Hills was drilled during the 1970s and early 2000s, and it covers, and overall we cover about 76 kilometres of the Map Tullabeck Formation, running down through this area through here. And so we're very fortunate to have quite an ability to expand this resource to some very large tonnages without a great deal of work. So the established resources in the area are also important to see, is that we have the Lilyvale resource, which basically sits right here, and our Cambridge is the other half of it, if you like. And there's some significant developments going on Lilyvale at the moment. The company that has put that to a PFS stage, and they have done quite a bit of work on it, and now I can tell you that they are looking to bring that into production, and they've now have a reserve, and a plan with their PFS they'll produce 0.49% vanadium pentoxide, so that's a little bit higher grade, and they'll produce 15 million tonnes of that material at a grade in concentrate of 1.82% vanadium pentoxide, which is very, very competitive. And also overall they're planning to do 790,000 tonnes of concentrate per annum, which will produce 12,700 tonnes of vanadium pentoxide flake, which is most important to know. So we're basically sitting adjacent to that. Now, just having a look at the next slide, a little bit more detail from a metallurgical point of view. And I should add that there's a couple of important things to add before we go to the metallurgical point of view. Now, all these drill holes here that make up our resource, they're about 500 metres apart, which means that in order to get to this point, only about 1,000 metres of drilling was done, which was in 36 drill holes, which means that there's an opportunity for us to expand that very quickly by just doing some additional drilling and to infill, to take it from inferred to indicated by just infill drilling. And the average depth of all of these drill holes here is about 30 metres, which means that again, we don't need to drill a lot in order to convert that to an indicated resource. which should also have the benefit of improving the grade, as has been seen to occur in the Lily Vale next door. It literally is just a magic man-made line which divides this resource from our resource in here. You can also see that there's a whole bunch of red dots through here. Those are actually part of our package that we've inherited from Liontown, and that material we're actually doing a revised resource, including those drill holes at the moment. So there should be a review of that coming out in the next month or so, and you'll see that the results of what we're getting are all quite high in terms of the vanadium grade. So we're already looking to find areas within our ore zone which may be higher grade than potentially our neighbour next door. So from a metallurgical point of view now, there was some early work done back in 2018 by Liontown, and what that showed was that it is a complete oxide material that we're looking to take the vanadium from. It's shallow from surface effectively, it's soft, it's friable, and our work showed that it was suitable for pre-concentration, and that's absolutely the case that we know for sure from the PFS from next door. And they also confirmed what we already knew, that it's amenable to acid leaching. So potentially there could be a plant built by one or many of the players in the area to produce vanadium flake, which is obviously the final product that's required for the vanadium work. We can expand, as I said, in the mineralisation will expand to the north, and we will infill that. So for not a great deal of drilling, we hope to have an indicated resource in that area later this year, in fact. So that's what I'm looking to do with our geological plan. So just moving now through to the next slide. This is the advanced drill targets. Now, what's good about these is they're in two different styles, if you like. So Runnymede comes with a whole bunch of historic drilling, and as you can see, the Runnymede area, the drilling here is not really ready for any sort of resource, because it's not in what I'd call a regular pattern for this type of material. So we'll infill that with a few drill holes this year to make it so that we can potentially put some form of resource over that area, and it's worth doing because the results of the earlier work are in line with what we've been expecting to get at Cambridge. So that will be done later this year. And then at Flinders River, I'll just remove all those off there. At Flinders River, again, very different. So this drilling here was completed by Chalice, and they've used it based on this radiometric anomaly. So from a geological point of view, the radiometric geophysical method is quite a good targeting tool. So we will use that in the other areas we have. But importantly, the drilling here is in a good pattern. We'll drill some further holes out through this way through the year, and then we'll convert this to a resource very quickly as well. So within the next sort of 6 months, we're planning to expand our 84 million tonnes to at least double what it currently is, which will put us in good stead for the next phase of the operation. And with that, I'll go to the next slide. So here we are in terms of timing. So we have a number of catalysts, and I can point out that obviously this conversion has been done. That's completed. We're looking to do this metallurgical test work, and the interesting thing about that is that the Liontown and Chalice companies brought all of their drill samples back into Perth, where there's the best metallurgical test work facilities there. And what we'll do is resample some of those. They've been held in proper storage under QC conditions, and we'll do the metallurgical test work in the next few months on drill data that already exists. So we'll have a bit of a leg up there. We need to complete the acquisition, which mainly depends on the tenure being transferred to Currie now, and closing off our raising that we're doing it currently. And then we'll look to expand the Cambridge resource, and we'll look to drill those other areas. So over the next short period, we expect to get through by the end of the year to have basically expanded the resource, have greater clarity over the vanadium in terms of metallurgical test work, although we do have the benefit of our neighbour next door providing a lot of that into the market already, but obviously we need to have our own data on our own area. So by the end of this year, we certainly will have moved the project from being just an exploration play to being something which has substantial resources and a flow sheet for our metallurgical processing. So in essence, it's not really so much an exploration play. It's about getting your processing sorted out, and there are some other good reasons that come with that, which I'll expand on a little bit further in the presentation, because I want to explain to you about the Queensland Government support, which also fits very well in with what the company is trying to do here at the project. So over the longer term, we're looking to, again, delineate and expand the project resource, develop our process pathway, and complete our preliminary economic assessment, and then launch into a feasibility assessment by the end of next year. So a very vigorous and a project plan, but certainly very achievable when we have a lot of support within government, and we also have the ability to convert to resource and reserve in a very short space of time, and without doing lots and lots of drilling. So the vanadium markets, it's important to understand, the other part of why vanadium, why Currie. It's about what we expect from the outside is telling us what we expect is going to happen in the vanadium markets. So traditionally, the steel alloys have been most of the production and will continue to be that for some time. But even those are actually expanding because of the change in and the conversion of the world through to electric vehicles, which means that one of the key ingredients for that market is that keeping the integrity of motor cars using lighter material in the form of vanadium alloys is one way of reducing the weight of motor cars, and also therefore reducing the fuel required to move them around. And also clearly with coming out of the pandemic, there's going to be a little bit of a boom, let's say, by most first world countries in the build of infrastructure, which will also push the demand and for steel production of these specialty steels. And most importantly, the battery space, I think, is where we're really targeting quite a surge. It's currently only 10%, but once people start to understand the vanadium space compared to the lithium, which has obviously been in people's forefront because lithium obviously is for their small devices, well, vanadium batteries are for the larger devices. So vanadium is scalable. It's really good for small towns. It's non-flammable. It's reusable, recyclable. It lasts longer, and it's more cost-effective than lithium for storage. So all of those factors make it quite a different commodity in a different space. We're not trying to compete against the small lithium batteries. We're looking at scaling to a different level. And then on the supply and demand, obviously COVID issues have caused market disruptions, but in the long term, we see that there's the greener economies push will increase the need for more vanadium products. Vanadium markets, as I have mentioned, automobile industry is looking to increase the use of vanadium to reduce the weight of their vehicles. Rothschild have put forward that they expect the demand will tighten. The supply will tighten, and as the Chinese steel slag producers are running close to capacity, and global vanadium market is expected to grow to 2.36 billion in 2025 from where we currently are at about 1.6 to 1.8 billion. So there's quite a bit of growth available there. And then, as I mentioned before, the redox flow batteries, I believe, will become a stronger part of the energy storage demand. And then there is this huge boom at the moment also with aerospace industries, which will need the likes of vanadium to push that along as well. So all in all, from the market point of view, we see it as being an upside period for vanadium. Here we are with the Queensland Government support. I just want to spend a couple of minutes on this. So the Queensland Government has decided to build a purpose-built, bespoke actually, pilot plant in Townsville, which would be the place where we would be shipping our product. They're allocated a $10 million support facility, and I've been invited with all the other vanadium companies in what the Queensland Government's calling the Vanadium Hub to participate in this, not only in how the facility will be used, but also any particular unique qualities that any of the companies require. So we've already had our first kickoff meeting, and there's one every other month now to bring this to bear. And there's a very good relationship between all of the companies that are working in the region. And the beauty of this is that in timeline, this exactly fits Currie Rose timeline to bring this project to development, because the pilot plant is an essential key part of our flow sheet, and it's expected to be online next year, which fits very well with our time frame. And the Queensland Government is also bringing the mining department together in this as well. And so getting permitting and everything will be streamlined to enable companies to bring their product to market as quickly and as efficiently as possible, notwithstanding that we need to comply with all the environmental regulations, which are standard in most countries now. But certainly they'll be looking to support wherever they can to build this industry, because they see there's an opportunity to do this now. And I don't think there are many governments around the world which are dedicating this sort of funding to assist business and private enterprise to bring their projects to bear. So it's a very important part of our process over the next couple of years. So our team, we're all very experienced, been around the traps for a long time, and so the majority of the team is based in Canada. There are two of us in Australia, and both Rob Kirtland and I have worked in Queensland extensively, so there's a really good wealth of experience there to tap into for all facets of the project. From a post-transaction point of view, you can see that this is what I'll end up with outstanding shares currently. We've got 30 million warrants out, and fully diluted, we'll have 132 million shares on issue. We'll have Chalice and Liontown as major shareholders, both holding about 13% of the company, which is a great backstop. It certainly helps from the Queensland point of view to have them there, because they're well known in Queensland for being people that get things done. So we're very keen to have them there as major shareholders and who will support the company through all stages. And then to wrap it up, so hopefully I haven't put too many people to sleep at this point in time, but certainly we believe this is a very exciting story. There are so many pluses which make this a very interesting and very doable project. We're in this area called the Mount Isa Townsville Economic Zone, which will also be part of the Queensland government funding. They're trying to develop that whole region. We sit in between Mount Isa, which is a huge mining centre, and the port city of Townsville. So from an infrastructure point of view, we couldn't be better placed. It's a critical mineral, and so it also gets the benefit from other government agencies as well. So our federal government in Australia is also keen to see this develop. There is quite a lot of historical data, but it's still underexplored, as I pointed out, and we have a situation where we have great intercepts of vanadium. It's shallow. We'll have a strip ratio close to 1-to-1 because of it's right on surface. So there are no issues with that. We currently have no issues that we can see with any other government agencies. There's water, there's supply routes, there's personnel. All of those things all tick the right boxes. We don't need to spend a great deal of funding on drilling. As I indicated, a few thousand metres of drilling and we'll convert substantial amounts of the ground into inferred resources, and momentum is happening. Vanadium is building. Vanadium demand is improving. And I think as people are starting to understand that vanadium redox flow batteries are part of the power change that needs to happen over the next 20 or 30 years as the battery demand and battery demand for larger scale batteries develops. So Currie Rose, I'll read it verbatim, Currie Rose is well positioned to move forward in this battery metal strategy as the world continues to decarbonise. And on that note, I'm very happy to close off the presentation. Take you back to Tim.
Great. Thank you very much, Mike, for an informative presentation. We will now start the Q&A portion of the webinar. A reminder to everyone on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. Do have a question or two here. Looking on the metallurgy side of things, the proposal for the neighboring property involves more of a processing plant. Would that be required here, or would this be leachable?
Well, basically, we would need to put in a processing plant of our own. It's really just a concentrator. So there is a scale to this. Obviously, when the grade of the material is where it is, you need to have quite a big concentrating plant. And and also you want to optimize that so that you're not pushing too much, let's call it waste, from the mine site through to the port. So then that's where you need to do a cost benefit analysis. And I can tell you that the guys next door, they believe that their project will produce, so two steps. Firstly, the current price for vanadium is $9.60 US a pound, which another advantage is that you'll get the arbitrage with the Australian dollar, which that means that it's $13 Aussie. So you're already getting an advantage because of the currency value. Now, the company next door claims they'll be able to have an operating cost of $8 Australian a pound. So we've got at $13 we got $5 a pound freeboard, and based on their calculations, they have a payback period of 2 years and an IRR of 62%. So all of those things are actually pretty substantial, and whilst that's at a higher, their sums are at a slightly higher $8 vanadium price, there's still plenty of fat in the system to be able to make it very worthwhile. So yes, we will have to put in a concentrator.
Okay. And following up on that, obviously with the neighboring property there, and I believe the company that owns it is owned by, or also has a gold project elsewhere and some different things.
Yes.
Would there be the potential to consolidate the area further, or I suppose they're focused on building that mine themselves?
Look, I haven't had the conversation. I have met with them at the Talk Fest with the Queensland government. All of the players were there, and I wouldn't say no. I would suggest that it's really about having a conversation, and certainly practically it would make sense if, rather than have a pit wall that stops on an artificial boundary, to continue it through and into our area and share a facility. Well, then that if that's possible, then that would be worthwhile looking at, and certainly that would be something we would do over the next few months, in order to just have a conversation. But certainly, if they may be focused on doing their own thing, as will we. So it's not like we need to have it in that to make it work. That's for sure.
Okay, great. And one other question on the metallurgy side of things: is there specific test work you would need to complete to know if the vanadium oxide product you produce would be suitable for battery manufacture, or is the vanadium generally of high enough purity that it would be fairly interchangeable?
Well, that's where this pilot plant comes in. So the companies that are working in this space have had to build their own pilot plants at considerable cost. And so there are a couple of those that have been built. And you're talking about a pilot plant that actually produces about 2 to 3 tons. That's it. And so it's not a great deal, but certainly we know from the work that's been done already and from our neighbours' experience is that in reality it's quite pure. All we'll need to do is have a concentrator. It's not a complicated process. It's sort of an industry standard circuit that'll require some of the usual things, crushers, jigs, wash plant, and a few other things to remove some of the other deleterious elements out. And that's where I see some advantages, in the sense that there is quite a bit of potential for alumina for high purity alumina, which is also in high demand from a market point of view. And also there is also silica, which we should be able to wash out of the ore as well. So that's they're more in line with what we'll be looking to do in our next phase of metallurgical test work, is to find out, well, what else is there that we can extract to be our advantage. And because at the moment, none of those things are penalties in terms of concentrate. There aren't any nasty things in there like arsenic or anything like that which will cause a penalty to the price. So it's not what I call overly complicated, but certainly that's why we need to get all the test work done as soon as possible, so that if there is any problems, that we can identify them early.
Great. And one kind of general question here, but with the lithium demand constantly rising and supply being constrained, do you think people will start searching for alternatives? If so, do you think vanadium could fill the spot?
Yeah, certainly. The vanadium is it comes in a lot of forms. So there's two main formats. The sedimentary style, which is what we have, is really Mother Nature's done all the work and concentrated the vanadium into sedimentary formations. And then, of course, the other main type is where it's bound in with iron and titanium in quite let's call it extraction more difficult process required. Still, obviously, good grades of vanadium, but they have to extract it from the iron. So, yes, there will be, more people start looking for deposits, and there will always be more found. But obviously, again, you want to be part of the first movers, if you like, to get right into the space. So, and if we've got enough resources, which we'll start to gather a lot more resources. It's less likely to be a problem as a producer. And can vanadium be used for other things? Well, look, I think there's a lot of research going into the redox flow type of studies to see how that technology can be applied to other things, and it's quite possible that other technological advances will occur, and more vanadium will be required. But certainly, if you just think about how many electric vehicles are going to be built over the next 20 or 30 years to replace all of the carbon guzzlers, then quite clearly there will be a huge demand for making those vehicles lighter. So therein lies a big demand.
Great. And a couple of questions here, kind of shifting to kind of community relations and politics a little bit, but are there
Sure.
Aboriginal groups or other local landowners that you will need to negotiate with for surface rights?
Yes. So at this stage there are no native title claims, which is no guarantee that it won't occur in the future. But as I indicated in the presentation, there is a well-defined process in Queensland of consultation with the traditional owners, and gosh, I've been doing this for a long time with all sorts of different groups in Australia in the past, and over the last few years, I think there's been quite a good, respectful shift between the mining industry and the traditional owner groups to realise that we're not enemies anymore. We're actually want to be business partners, and so that's the way things are being done now. And I think having a more prescriptive approach to that, with the government sitting in between, has been very beneficial to both sides. So from a native title perspective, we don't see that as being an impediment. From the landowner side of things, there are quite large cattle stations in that area. It's mainly a cattle area rather than agriculture. And so the key there is to, again, be right up front. We do have compensation, again, statutory compensation type of arrangements between the landholder and the companies, and that is a negotiation. But it is such that you can't, as the landowner, you can't basically say absolute no. You have to have a proper negotiation. So there are triggers in there for both sides to make sure that there is an agreeable position reached.
Great. And then another question here, generally on politics, Australia recently held elections. New government appears to be a little more liberal leaning. How do you expect this to affect the mining industry and perhaps your company?
Okay. So both our two major parties really sit in the middle, and they both understand that we can't just turn off resources. It's a huge, big chunk of the Australian economy, and so that from a federal point of view, they're not going to get in the way of development because it'll hurt them electorally next time. So that's as I see it. More importantly, the state government is also of the same party as the new federal government, and they are very proactive in this space. So they would be at odds with their federal counterparts if there was some form of moratorium or something like that. They would fight tooth and nail to to make sure that their plans aren't upset by the federal government. So whilst, yes, I agree it's a bit of a change, they're probably a lot greener in their outlook than the former government, but they're certainly very keen to see this sort of development because clearly we need to change our carbon approach, and this is one of the metals that we can use in order to do that.
Okay, great. And I suppose I'll finish it off here with kind of a general question, review question, but just to review, what news do we expect to have over the coming weeks and months from Currie Rose?
Okay, so the main one is that we'll have a revised resource out in the next few weeks. That's number one. And now we're in the winter in Queensland. We'll be able to embark on our first drilling program in the next few months. And of course, that we just got to get all of our permitting in place for that to happen. And then that certainly does come back to the transfer of title, which I need to have completed before some of those things can occur. So I can do the resource upgrade. I can do the metallurgical test work because I have the samples already. They're the two key things that'll be news flow in the next couple of months, followed by resource drilling and infill drilling. Should be a pretty exciting time, actually.
Great. Great. Well, I would like to again thank Mike Griffiths for presenting today, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Just a reminder that Red Cloud Securities will be back tomorrow afternoon when our webinar series continues with Additon Resources presenting Wednesday, June 8th at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great rest of your day.